I know there's a lot of you Python programmers out there that are anxious to bring Python into the enterprise, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're graduating Python from the language of hackers to the language of the enterprise. Hi, I'm Calvin Powers, and this is the IBM Developer Tech Talk series. Today's Tech Talk is called Deploy a Python Flask Application into Kubernetes. And our subject matter expert today is Max Shapiro, who I think is out of Austin. Max, welcome to the Tech Talk. Isn't that where you're from?
No, I'm actually in New York.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, well, and this is your first Tech Talk with us, right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. And what's sort of the motivation behind this code pattern that we're going to see today?
So the motivation behind this was actually, it started a year ago, where I was interested in logging the different remote days that I worked from home, the number of vacation days that I took, and also the number of holidays that I used. And being a programmer, I decided to create a quick Python application to do that. And so it was just a simple command line interface, and it saved the information to a CSV file. And when I was ready to create a code pattern, my manager and I were discussing different options, and somehow this application got brought into the mix, and one thing led to another, and here we are today, and it's a full web application.
Awesome. Well, before we let Max get into the demo and the code walkthrough, I have to do just a little bit of housekeeping. I will be monitoring the YouTube chat today for your questions. And so if you have any questions for Max, post them to the YouTube chat, and I'll either ask them immediately or at the end based on where Max is in his demo. So don't be shy. Feel free to type in your questions there. Also, I want to call your attention to the description field in the YouTube page. The very first link in the description field is to today's event page. And on the event page, you can get the link where we have all the code for this code pattern, as well as other getting started information. So do yourself a favor, after you watch Max's presentation today, go to the event page. And once again, that is the first link in the description field on the YouTube page. Okay, and once again, don't be shy about your questions, all right? Okay, Max, hand it over to you. What do you got for us?
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully my screen can be seen now.
Yes, I'm seeing you seeing me. There you go.
All right. So to start out with, since I mentioned before that this started out as a simple command line program, I am going to show you what that was and what it turned into. So here in this file, this is all this originally started out as, just this simple application. And I'll go ahead and do a little quick demo of what it looked like. So just running Python worklog.py. You can see it's pretty basic. I can read from the CSV file, I can write to the CSV file, and I can exit the program. So just simply I can read say 2017 and look at the number of vacation days that I took in 2017. So you can see there were 3 of them. So that's what this started out as. Now, I'll show you what it turned into now and run it locally. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll explain what's going on as this builds. So here I've got the command docker compose build, and I'll go ahead and run that. So this takes a couple minutes to build, and while this is building, I'll explain what is going on. So it is in the process of creating 3 different containers, Docker containers, one of which houses the Mongo database, another houses the Python Flask application, and the third houses the React user interface that I created. And you don't need to run this this command to run this application locally. If you choose to, you can also run it without containers by just running the Python application, setting up a MongoDB server, and running Node for the UI if you choose to run that too. So it is almost done. So we'll just give it another minute to finish up. And while we're waiting, I will type in localhost 3000, where we can connect to the front end.
While you're waiting, I'll just take this opportunity to say to folks, if you go to the event page, and once again, that's the first link in the description field, not only can you get the link to the code for today's Tech Talk, but you can get a free IBM Cloud account that will let you run this application live without any cost to you. All right, back to you, Max.
So it is built successfully, and here we can see the user interface for this application. And I'm going to go, and so I haven't really explained exactly what this Python Flask application does. I explained what my old application did. This is similar. However, you can log office days, remote days, vacation, holiday, and sick days, as you can see here. So I'll go ahead and create a test account and just call the username user and the password test and create that. So as you can see here, this is the dashboard. There's no data here because this is a new account. So I'll go ahead and show you how you can interact with this. So let's say this test user for the first week in February worked in the office. So we can select and click and drag from the 4th to the 8th. As you can see, it highlights here, showing that that's what we've selected. And we have type office. So we'll go ahead and click update, and it will add those days accordingly. And once that is done, you can see that now 5 office days have been added, and 5 office days have been added to the chart here. So let's say also this test user decided to go on vacation for Valentine's Day and the day after. So similarly, we can click and drag from the 14th to the 15th and change it to vacation and click update. And similarly, you can see that it updated here on the right side. And here in the US, we have President's Day on the 18th. So let's say that this person had a holiday for that day. So we can go ahead and add a holiday for that. And let's say also that from last Friday till the end of the month, they worked in the office again. So we can click and drag from the 22nd to the 28th, change it to the office, and go ahead and update that. Now, this person doesn't work on weekends, and you can see that I've added days for the weekends. So I can go ahead and click and drag for the weekend and delete those days. And now let's say that the user today is not working in the office and is instead working remotely out of California. So I can click on today, change it to office, type in the location to California, and update that. And while that happens, you can see that there's now a new chart, and this chart shows the breakdown of the different remote locations that the user specifies. And in addition, below that, you can see that you can export the data, which just downloads all the data into a CSV file for your choosing. You can go between the different years and the different months and the different days. And if you go up here to the top right corner, you can click on the user and go to settings, and you can adjust different settings. So let's say this user is limited to 10 vacation days a year. We can go ahead and add 10 here. And in addition to including the different caps, you can also include a Slack webhook URL, which will allow you to, when you add an event or a type of day, it will show up in your Slack channel saying that you've added such and such day for that particular day. So I'll go ahead and add these 10 cap for the vacation days per year. And you can see that it is updated here to 8 vacation days remaining because this person's already used 2. So that is the demo of running this application locally. So I will now explain how to get to this pattern. So to get to this pattern, you want to go to developer.ibm.com/patterns and go to technology here. And you can either select API management or Kubernetes. Either one will get you to it. And you'll want to go to the code pattern called deploy a Python Flask application in Kubernetes. So go ahead and click on that. And you can see it here. There's a summary and description which talks about what we already covered, a flow chart which explains how this application, the structure of the application, how it works, and also at the bottom here, you can click on and view my blog post, which I'll do so now. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it basically details how I created this application and my journey along the way and the steps and decisions that I made. So let me now jump into the repo. So here is the repo where this code pattern is housed. And a couple directories worth noting are the app directory here and the web worklog directory here. The app directory is where the Python Flask application is, and the web worklog is where the React user interface is. For this tech talk, I'm not going to go into the React user interface because that is an additional component that I added to this code pattern. So users can have a better visualization of how this code pattern works. So I'll jump into the Python Flask application part of this. So here there are 2 different directories. One is called services and the other is called web. In services, it is broken down, or the application is broken down into different microservices. And the reason why I did it this way, as opposed to how I originally did the original application, is it's easier to follow and understand the code when it's broken down rather than have everything in one giant file and not really understand what's connected and what's going on. So I'll go ahead and jump into services. And as you can see here, there are different types of services. There are services that are associated with a user, and there are also services that are associated with the work log data. So we'll jump into the user services first. The first one here is creating a user, which this is all it is for creating a user. Logging in. And resetting a user password. And jumping back, we've got the work log services. So we've got the getting the work log data. And in here, we get both the work log data and the settings associated with the user. And in here, in the modify, we add work log data, we update the work log data, we delete the work log data, and we also update the work log settings. So those are the different services, and they all interact with this utils.py file. And in here is where the connection to the Mongo database is happening. And I'm not going to go through everything in here, but this is basically how the file that interacts with the Mongo database. So taking a step back, now we're back to here, the services and web. And for web, before I jump into that, I want to explain what, for those that that are not familiar with what a Flask application is. What Flask is it's a micro framework for Python that's used for web development. And here I am using it for API management and creating API endpoints. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Here I've got the Swagger file and the REST API endpoints. So we'll go into the API endpoints, and we've got the logging in endpoint and the different endpoints associated with a user. So creating a user, resetting a user's password, and getting a user's data, updating user data, adding user data, and deleting user data. And down here, we've got getting a user settings and updating user settings. So for a better visualization, I will show you what the Swagger looks like, so you get a better sense of what the API endpoints are. So I'll come back here to the application that's running locally and change this to 5000/API. So here you can see that we are running locally, and this is the URL to access the API. And here are the different endpoints. So like I mentioned before, we've got logging in, creating a user, deleting user data and the user, getting the work log data, adding work log data, updating work log data, resetting a user password, getting user settings, and updating a user settings. And to show you that you don't need the user interface to interact with the application, I'll go ahead and show you that that is the case. So coming back over here, we're just going to do a simple curl call to localhost, and we'll just simply log in using the test user and the test password. And you can see that we've successfully logged in. Now, if I change this to the wrong password, you'll see that we obviously can't log in. And so that's just an example of how to interact with the APIs without using the graphical user interface. So now I will show you how to take this application and deploy and run it on Kubernetes on the cloud. So let me come back over here to the repo, and I've included a README file which has some of the same information from the code pattern webpage. And I also have the steps on how to deploy that, or deploy this application to Kubernetes on IBM Cloud. So here are the steps to do that. And in order to deploy it, you either need to, well, similarly to how I ran the application locally, where the containers were created for the application, there are containers that need to be created for deploying to Kubernetes. And the way that it works is you need to have those containers housed in a repository on Docker Hub. And you can either use the containers that I have housed here on my Docker Hub account, where I've got the user interface and the Python Flask application, or you can create your own by creating your own Docker Hub account. And
Hey, Max.
yes.
Quick question. So one of the chatters on the YouTube chat is new to the world of Kubernetes and Docker. Can you sort of just pause and take 60 seconds to kind of give a layman's explanation of what Docker is and what Kubernetes is?
Sure. So Docker is an easy way to containerize an application or a program or even a database or any type of software. And what I have, let me show what I have. Here. So this is the Docker file, which is basically the specifications on what the Docker container should look like. And so what it's saying here is this specific container uses Python version 3.7, and I'm the maintainer of it. And it basically installs Python, copies the files from the app directory, so the Python Flask application, and installs the requirements and runs the command, the Python command to run this application. And so basically what's happening is it is running in this container either locally or on the cloud, and it's not running on your machine per se, but in this container on your machine, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thanks a lot for that quick explanation. Appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. Let me remember where I was. Right, so Docker Hub. So if you want to use my Docker Hub repo, you are free to do so. Or if you'd like to create your own and modify what I have, or you have your own application that you'd like to Dockerize, then you would go ahead and create your account. And running these commands here, you would build the containers and push them to your repo on Docker Hub. So once that is all done, you will then need to provision a Kubernetes service on IBM Cloud. So in order to do that, you'll need an IBM Cloud account, and you'll want to create a new cluster. So to do that, you'll log in and you'll come over here to the top left navigation menu, click on Kubernetes, go to clusters and create cluster, which is this page that we're on right now. And you can either choose from two different types of clusters, one being free and the other being the standard. For this application that for WorkLogger, it works with either free or standard. So once you provision a cluster with the configurations of your choosing and the name, you'll wait a few minutes for it to create. And when it's done, you'll see a little green circle next to it like this, showing that it is up and running. So at this point, you'll need to gain access to your cluster from your machine. So in order to do that, you'll follow these access commands here and instructions. And once you do so, you'll be able to connect or communicate and talk with your new cluster that you created. So at this point, let me go back here. You are ready to deploy your application to the Kubernetes service on IBM Cloud. And whether you have the free or the standard cluster, most of the instructions are the same. There's just one additional instruction if you have the standard cluster. So as you can see here, you want to run these commands, these kubectl applies for deploying the Mongo database, the Python Flask application, and the user interface if you choose so. And they're the exact same for the standard, these three commands. And when that's done, you can run this command here to check and see if that the pods are running on Kubernetes. And you can also, in addition, come back here, go to the Kubernetes dashboard, which I have up here, and you can see that they are deployed with check marks and that they are currently running. And you can also see that the images are from the images that I have hosted on Docker Hub for the user interface and for the Python Flask application. And Mongo here is not one that I am hosting because it already exists. So with that, I will go back over here. And depending on which type of cluster you've provisioned, will depend on, depending on which type of cluster you provisioned, there are different ways to access them. So if you have the free light version, you'll access it through the public IP, which you can be gotten by running this command here. And using port 32001, you'll be able to connect to the UI. And using port 32000, you'll be able to connect to the APIs. And if you're like me and you have the standard cluster, you will also, the additional step that I mentioned previously, you'll want to apply the Ingress YAML file. And in that file, you will specify the subdomain that you'd like to use. So since I mentioned that, let me go back up here to the deploy webapp.yaml file. And if you are using an Ingress subdomain, you'll want to change that here. And also similarly, if you are using a different Docker Hub repo, you'll want to change the image location to that here. And if you're doing so similarly with the UI, you want to do it for that file too, the webapp UI.yaml. So once all that is done, you'll be able to access the application using the standard cluster from the Ingress subdomain, which I have, and I will show you that now. As you can see here, this is not localhost, this is actually the subdomain. So I'll go ahead and just create another test account. And you can see here, because I created a new account, similarly to before, there's no data here, so I can go ahead and add it, similarly to before, and it just works in the same way. So also like before, you can access the Swagger file. So let me go ahead and do that. Whoops. And you can see here that the URL is in fact different and is not localhost. And in this case points to the subdomain. And I will go ahead and run the simple login command like before and show you that you can access the APIs without the UI. So here I've got the curl to this subdomain, and we're using logging in with the same username and test password. And you can see that we've successfully logged in. So that is how to deploy and run this work logging application to Kubernetes on IBM Cloud. And just another note, So if you are interested in not only using or deploying this particular code pattern to IBM Cloud or in Kubernetes, you can also deploy your own containerized application following this as a model. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me stop sharing. Where is it hiding? There it is. So I really enjoyed creating this code pattern. It was fun to build, and I hope that you also enjoyed me sharing it to you. And that's all I have to present.
I should go off mute, shouldn't I?
Yes.
Okay, so I think this is a great illustration of this notion of developing in a local container and then pushing the exact same application out onto the cloud platform using the exact same container. So I think this has been a great illustration of that, and it just goes to show you that you can scale up Python and Flask at sort of the enterprise level, because once you've got your Docker and Kubernetes set up, you can then scale your Kubernetes clusters up to handle demand, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think we have any additional questions. We had a couple of procedural questions about where to get the code, but I will just say that everything you saw today, you can do with a free IBM Cloud account, right, Max?
Correct.
And so once again, if you're watching on the YouTube page, the very first link in the description field will take you to the event page for today. The event page will have the replay for this video, so you can come back later and watch Max, go through the steps one at a time. The event page will also link to the code pattern page that Max created for this project. And that code pattern page has all the instructions that you saw here today, as well as the link to the GitHub repo and all of that. So you can get the code and follow the instructions step by step and deploy it for yourself. And then lastly, I just want to say that the event page also has a link on it that will let you sign up for a free IBM Cloud account. And the project that we saw today, you can build and deploy on the free IBM Cloud account. So there's nothing stopping you. It doesn't cost you a single penny to do exactly what Max did today. And then once you've successfully deployed the code that Max has got in place, you can start adding to it or building your own applications, because you'll learn the workflow at that point. Okay, so I think that's going to wrap us up for today. Max, again, thank you very much for walking us through the code today.
No problem. I enjoyed it.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.